So as we know, immediately after the Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman fight, Colby Covington was designated as the next opponent for the champion. And that's a really good fight. Now, a lot of people were caught off guard by this, but I personally actually wasn't. I was expecting Colby to be the next contender, especially once we learned that Hamza Chimaev was moving up to 185. I knew Colby was the next guy because they were trying to set up the Hamza and Colby fight, which showed that that was going to be the #1 contender fight. They never cared about Belal Muhammad. In fact, they want Belal to fight Shavkat Rakhmonov, and the fact that they put that together pretty quickly means that they always had that targeted, right? They always wanted Belal to fight Shavkat. With Colby Covington, he's pretty much the biggest name in the welterweight division right now. It's either him or Jorge, but Jorge just lost to Colby, right? So I honestly expected this to happen, especially with the fact that Colby had the biggest numbers when it came to like views and stuff like that for UFC 286. He was getting more views than both guys in the main event. And he wasn't even fighting, which is crazy. Colby even brought that up in the press conference as well, where not only for the weigh-in numbers, but even for the press conference, way more views than anybody else. Almost 1 million views on the Mac Life, which is crazy. And when he came into attendance and was shown on the screen, the crowd went crazy for him. I think the UFC saw, okay, Colby's definitely a draw here. Colby can definitely bring eyes on this fight. Let's put him up against Leon Edwards. And he did us a really good favor here. Came in on short notice to weigh in as a backup fighter. And to cut that much weight, he said like 18 pounds in a couple days, is insane, you know? With everything involved, it looked like Colby Covington was the most logical next option for Leon Edwards. Not from a meritocracy standpoint, but from everything else. I mean, we've seen this happen so many times already. I don't know why anybody was even caught off guard by it. The biggest name, especially coming off a win and doing the UFC a favor, is going to get the next title shot over a guy who, Belal Muhammad's okay, you know, he's cool and stuff. He's doing really good things right now. He's on a win streak. But nobody's really paying attention. So I definitely saw this route coming. I definitely saw that Colby was going to get the next title shot. And it should be a difficult fight for Leon Edwards, if we're going to be honest here. This should be a tougher fight for Leon than Kamaru Usman was. Especially the way Usman fought in that third fight with not that much pressure. Stuck himself in kicking range for a long time and even had many takedown opportunities and never went for them. Colby Covington does not do that. Colby will keep that high-paced wrestling style mixed up with crazy output on his feet against anybody. Doesn't matter who you are, and especially against Leon Edwards, who has the kind of style that doesn't do as well against pressure. If you look at this fight on paper, Colby Covington should do better than Kamaru Usman did, but that's not to say that Colby will win the fight, but his style should definitely be a tougher task for Leon Edwards. But Leon is a sniper. He does have a lot more confidence now, and he is a well-rounded, skilled fighter, so he can make anything happen. But if Colby pressures and wrestles and throws a lot of output with his hands and stuff like that and doesn't back up, this is going to be a crazy fight, man. You know, unless Leon's able to snipe at Colby somewhere in that fight. But otherwise, this should be a tough fight for both guys, especially with the fact that Colby's not going to give him that kind of range. If you actually pay attention to the third fight with Usman, he stuck himself at kicking range for a long time, and he didn't even need to because Leon was constantly giving him ground. Leon does that to everybody, right? Leon likes to move around and stuff, and he'll give you space. But Usman didn't pressure through that space that often. And it looked like he respected Leon Edwards striking so much, of course because he got knocked out by him, but even in that knockout in the second fight, he stuck himself in that kicking range again. That's where he has the biggest issues with Leon Edwards. Whenever he pressured Leon and he mixed up his wrestling at the same time, Leon didn't have much for him. He had to be on the defensive and didn't really amount any offense against Usman. There was a time that Usman didn't shoot a takedown when he could have, but instead tried to box with Leon in this exchange, and he got caught by a knee. But as you can see right here, after he throws his punch, look where Leon's hands go. His left hand goes up. Usman's level's already changed. He could have just shot right into Leon, but instead of that, he never shot in at all. He tried to back out, and Leon kneed him in the face. This is completely different than what Colby Covington would do. Colby does not like to back up away from you, especially when he's throwing punches. And whenever he throws punches, he always looks for the opportunity to shoot a takedown on you and negate any offense you're trying to throw out. And actually, every single time, 100% of the time, when Usman did that to Leon, even in the third fight, it worked. It worked on getting Leon to the fence. He didn't do anything that threatened Usman. The only time Usman was ever threatened or hit by something was when he didn't mix it up. But when he did mix it up, he has success doing it. And even when Usman threw his own punches, you saw him oftentimes back away after, showing the respect he had for Leon striking. And even when Leon would throw a jab back at him, or even a right hook, Usman always wanted to back away from the shot. But look at the difference with Covington. Look when, for example, he fought Jorge Masvidal, who has dangerous, fast hands. When Covington pressured him and threw a punch, Masvidal would return with a jab or a right hook. Covington would block and keep going forward. He never backed away. This is the difference between Colby and Usman when it comes to fighting Leon Edwards. If Leon throws a jab or a right hook, he's not going to back Covington up because that's what Leon wants. Leon wants to throw punches back at you to keep you at bay. It worked against Usman. It's most likely not going to work against Colby. And in fact, if he throws punches like this, he can also expect a takedown to come right under those. That happens in every single one of Covington's fights. And not only that, Usman was throwing his punches in singular numbers, one jab at a time. Didn't really throw combinations, but Colby Covington is a guy who throws a lot of combinations. And in that southpaw stance versus Leon's southpaw stance, he could throw that 1-2 as Leon's throwing a check right hook. This is the same reason why Nate Diaz rocked him, both southpaws at the time. Nate Diaz throwing the 1-2, Leon was throwing a check right hook, and every time he throws that right hook, it comes so wide, even against Usman in the third fight. Look how wide his arm is. There's a clear line down the center to land with the 1-2, or a potential jab left overhand, and that's exactly what Colby Covington does always before he sets up his takedowns. And then we talk about intercepting the movement. So Leon oftentimes, when he gets pressure to the fence and then you back away from any takedown attempt, he wants to rotate out at a far angle. And Usman sometimes would intercept this, but sometimes you would watch. And Trevor Whitman in the corner actually told Kamaru Usman, he picked it out in the fight, when you pressure him and he's trying to move away, run at him, just throw punches at him. He's not going to do much. And it's actually in fact true for the most part, not every single time, but for the most part, that Leon Edwards, when he's moving out like this, he just looks to move out. He doesn't look to do much else. He could be very much open not only to intercepting punches, but also takedowns as well if you're able to throw a hook, get him to stick in place, and then shooting on him. This is actually what Colby Covington did against Jorge Masvidal, but for Kamaru Usman, he didn't do this. Kamaru Usman, whenever he would try to intercept, he would only try to intercept and then stop. Whereas Colby Covington will not stop after throwing the punch, which is a big weapon to take against someone like Leon Edwards. This constant pressure from Colby Covington is the biggest issue for Leon going into that fight. Now, just like Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington also doesn't catch too many kicks. Even Jorge Masvidal, who's a great kicker, kicks really well to the legs and to the body. Colby was also not catching the kicks, and that could be a bit of an issue, only if Colby sticks in that range, which he never really does. So he never had a problem with the kicks, because it's also much harder to kick while you're on the back foot. And then we talk about the ground. Kamaru Usman's lack of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the most frustrating to watch. He really doesn't do anything else but just purely wrestle when he gets you down, whereas Colby Covington will actually go for things on you. Even in his last fight against Jorge, who has great Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu defense, Colby Covington will attack the rear naked choke. He will attack while he gets your back, completely different to what Usman does. Leon put 2-on-1 on Usman, right? He had two hands on Usman's one arm, and Usman had no idea what to do there. The 2-on-1 completely threw off Usman's attempts to do anything while on Leon's back, and it allowed Leon to just stand up. Colby doesn't do this, right? Colby will attack the rear naked choke with the other arm. He will neck crank you and get your attention on that arm while also securing the position a lot better, because look at Usman here, right? Usman is parallel to the fence. His side is against the fence. Colby did this as well against Jorge, but he adjusted in the fight. He rotated around even more with a neck crank to get his back more so against the fence, not his side. This would potentially take away Leon Edwards' ability to just stand up using the fence. And not only that, he did it multiple times when it came to his position while getting on top of Jorge. He knew that the fence was something that Jorge would try to use, so he's in half guard on top of Jorge and purposely gets into side control closest to the fence to take away the fence from the opponent to stand up. Colby seems to be a lot more aware on how to shut down the opponent's ability of getting up. And not only that, he scrambles way faster than Usman, and he doesn't use his strength in order to take you to the ground a lot of times. He'll use his pure technique and plethora of different kind of takedowns that Leon has probably not fought up against yet. So this should be a really interesting fight on paper. Colby has a lot of great strengths going into this fight, and the fact that he is such a tough test for Leon should bring a lot more eyes on this fight.